Okay, it's 5:26. This is C-Jam, the jamming one.
C-Jam is a non-profit campus community radio station here on the University of Windsor campus.
Thanks, Brady, but C-Jam is so much more than that. So hold on to your hats, folks, because the C-Jam story takes us all the way back to 1945. Radio arrived at the University of Windsor in 1945, starting off small with 8 male students making up the Assumption Music Appreciation Society. This radio club offered a 1-hour weekly broadcast in conjunction with Windsor's CKLW in their early years, but soon decided to bring a station to campus, and CSRW, or Canadian Student Radio Windsor, was born. These campus radio pioneers operated a closed-circuit system. That means if your building wasn't wired, you wouldn't have access to CSRW. CSRW was first wired into the Student Center, the campus pub, and various other buildings in 1969. The cost of $20,000 to wire residence buildings was far too much, but later that year, CSRW was wired into McDonald's and Vanier, with plans in place to wire Laurier Hall in future months. Did you know that Mac and Laurier used to be separate dorms for men and women? After CSRW went live for the men in Mac Hall, it took over a year for women in Laurier to get the same privilege. But remember, it was the 60s. During the 70s, CSRW made yet more breakthroughs. The station finally attained a license in 1974 to broadcast on 660 AM at a whopping 20 watts. I buy light bulbs stronger than that. Spearheaded by station manager Mike Pilecki, CSRW ran its first summer broadcast and topped off the year on October 10th with government approval for new call letters, CJAM.
First and foremost, it was a place to hang out. Okay, it was down the hall over there, outside of the pub. You walked in, and there was a big square office. To the left was a little hallway where you walked. You had the shelf with, I don't know, a couple hundred records, and then around there an on-air room and a production room.
An AM license hardly made it a radio station, but the record club was a heck of a lot of fun. And a common passion for alternative radio pushed forward the FM application for one of the last 2 spots on the FM frequency.
I knew early that it was going to be a great opportunity, and I could see what was going on at the station. They were so poorly staffed and so improperly funded that I knew I had to get involved in some way. But at that point they said, well, you have to be a student. So that kind of pushed me into going back to school. So once I started here at school part-time, I was allowed to join the station. We started putting a staff together under the guise that we would be practicing what we're going to be doing for FM. And that's where we put the ideas down of how to, put the music in we had folk music in the mornings, and we had blended music in the afternoons.
The application was in, the plans in place, but money was tight. The Student Administrative Council, or SAC, agreed to let CJAM host a referendum on September 15, 1980, to double the student levy for a total of $10 per year. In agreement to holding a referendum, an ultimatum was imposed. If CJAM didn't win, we would be turned off indefinitely. Fortunately, support for the station gave the radio club a 710 to 639 victory. Finances were finally in place, but the turmoil of achieving a broadcast license was really taking a toll on staff. In the 2 years following the station's successful 1980 referendum, CJAM's application for FM was forced into delay. SAC at the time had bylaws restricting FM broadcast. Eventually, the bylaw was amended, but conflict within the station ensued. On December 10, 1981, CJAM closed its doors indefinitely due to staff and management disputes, and the FM license was at risk once again. Since 1969, staff had their fingers crossed for an FM license. And now our doors were locked? It doesn't make any sense, but thankfully, our story doesn't end here. Nearly 2 months passed before doors were unlocked in February of 1982. But the internal conflicts encouraged those skeptical of CJAM's future. But as it turned out, success was just around the corner.
Well, it was kind of strange because, like I was saying, this was a record playing club. We had an AM license that you could listen to our station if you were plugged in on campus. If your radio was plugged in, nobody listened. About twice a semester, the studio was right next to the pub. About twice a semester, the pub would put us on at lunch, and that would be the highlight of the year. Like, that was it. So no one. And then a couple people who in comm studies who really knew their stuff went for the application, applied, we got the license, and then there was no radio, no record playing club. There was like I think about a 6-month transition into like pointing towards that first day on the air as FM, November '83, I believe. So it was a lot of just long hours in the offices getting ready to go on the air. It was very strange actually because no one was really playing, you know, we had records playing in the office, but we just were waiting for that day to come.
The wait ended on November 14th, 1983. At 6 a.m., former staff member Chris Burston was the first voice on CJAM 91.5 FM.
CJAM 91.5 FM, Windsor, Ontario.
The difference was like being a baby bird stumbling along through the leaves to, you know, a bird being able to fly. It was incredible. And the response we got, because there was nothing like it on the airwaves here at the time that was playing alternative music all the time. So the response we got was really good. I started out with just a heartbeat, and I let that run for a bit. And the idea behind the song, the specials, Ghost Town, came from our music director, Pat Petro, and I'm pretty sure Desmond McGrath, his assistant, had something to do with that as well. By the late 80s, the idea of punk music and new wave and all that had started to dissolve a bit, and it was getting really watered down, and there was a lot of disillusionment in the music industry, and Ghost Town really reflected what that was like, and it also reflected at the same time what Windsor was like. Windsor was not looked at in a very good light, but the people who were here, we knew it was a good place, and we knew we had something special that we were going to infuse into Windsor. So Ghost Town really epitomized that feeling we had at that time. And the song has really stood the test of time for having just a really, really great first song.
And when FM came, we got 50 watts. That enabled us to be heard throughout maybe 3/4 of Windsor, and it'll spill over into Detroit. And we did have Detroit listeners in those when we went FM. So yeah, I think that changed. I did notice people start actually calling and requesting songs. So it made a difference, kind of boosted morale a bit. But even if we were carrier current, I'd probably still do it.
I remember many of us just huddled outside just the on-air room and listening, and it was, and then trying to find out, is it actually going on the airwaves? Are we still just a record playing club? And, to get somebody calling in and, making a request later that day, that was a huge thing, to have somebody who's listening at home calling in, somebody we didn't know, right? Because you think, oh, this is part of the 20 or so people who are part of this. No. So that was big.
All that hard work finally paid off. But like always, some finances were an issue. So in 1985, CJAM launched its first pledge drive.
The first pledge week, I think we raised about $10,000 the first year. And between all the other campus community radio stations in the network, they were amazed at how much money we had raised, not knowing what we were doing at all. So we were very successful the first ones going through. The first one was, it was pretty amazing because we were really riding a wave of, the newness of the station. And
none of us really had any experience in we're kind of thinking over the airwaves we're putting out a pan to, can you please give us some money? And luckily there was the station manager, assistant manager, back then had their stuff together and really just developing the relationship with other campus radios. And that was a big thing too.
Aside from the student levy, CJAM's income consists mostly of pledge drive donations. And it takes a tremendous amount of teamwork from both staff and volunteers.
Pledge drive is the most important week of the year. It is the time when everyone comes together and does a special fundraising program. Every single show that we have creates a special and goes live and fundraises themselves. They go out and get donations, whether it be of large donations or people bring in bags of change, and we generally raise about $25,000 to $30,000.
Pledge only lasts 1 week on air, but donations find their way to the station all year round. And pledge drive swag is pretty awesome. 1985 was topped off with CJAM being announced Metro Times' favorite new music station of the year. The following year saw even more change, and the alternative station began broadcasting full 24-hour days on June 24th, 1986.
There was a period where we stopped broadcasting at 12 midnight and then resumed at 6 a.m. So I remember that period. In fact, I used to go in the production room from 12 midnight till 6 a.m. to do experimental music. So when we went 24 hours, I was a little disappointed that I lost that fun thing to do. But the transition was actually very good. And we did have people listening 2 in the morning till 6 in the morning shows.
Finally, a full-fledged 24-hour radio station, and CJAM was really making waves. But on the heels of the 1989 Montreal massacre, some red flags were raised about CJAM's most dedicated and hateful fan. The Grand Dragon has been calling the station since we obtained an FM license. For years, he has been hounding the station, but staff brushed off his unlikely threats.
He would listen, call in, and give harangues that lasted sometimes a half hour. So you'd put the phone down, And he'd still be screaming about how much he hated CJAM and how he's going to come down there and blow up the station. And racist stuff and sexist stuff, you know. But most people just sort of laughed it off. And then he'd send us stuff in the mail, usually once or twice a day. It would be a package, and it'd say, you know, the Nazi radio. It'd say, air or die.
I just remember he used to call me and was like, oh no, not this guy again. And he'd pick it up and he'd right away start with the racist accusations and just, I'll give it a rest. You'd hang up and then ring, it'd be the same guy again.
As easy as it was to just put the phone down, the Grand Dragon persisted, and following the Polytechnique shooting, it was decided something needed to be done, and a police report was made.
Through police investigations, we learned a lot about the Grand Dragon. It turns out he was a middle-aged man named Larry who lived in his parents' basement somewhere in Michigan. But he did have a PhD in science.
What drove his obsession with CJAM is unclear, but police determined that without owning a car or any firearms, he was completely harmless, and advice was to just let him be.
Eventually, Larry got tired of us, and he did disappear, but I'll get to that later. Moving on to 1990, we had some new problems, and some of the old ones resurfaced.
The station manager at the time lied about submitting the next power increase application from 50 watts to 450 watts. Eventually, the paperwork was found, unopened, in a filing cabinet, causing a great deal of frustration internally and a great deal of scrutiny externally. With the power increase uncertain, SAC vetoed funding once again, and plans to boost the signal were put on hold. Probably for the best, since CJAM was moving to a tin can during student renovations anyways.
And they set up to a large trailer in the quad area in front of the library, and they moved all the equipment in there, and we broadcasted from there for about a year.
And we were in a 60-foot trailer during that time, and I had to coordinate the move. And it was a little stressful. It was kind of fun. I missed the trailer though. It was a little cozy.
In a sense, it kind of made the station more prominent on the campus. We were there in the quad. You couldn't miss us. You know, people wander around this campus 5-6 years and don't even know CJAM exists. But while that trailer was out there, I think everyone knew that CJAM existed.
Now that was a problem. We didn't have much space, and the trailer wasn't very secure. So in fact, the entire CD library was stolen one night.
In September of 1993, the Student Center renovations were finally complete, and CJAM moved to the space it has now. It took some time to restock the record collection and move into the new space, but the transition was smooth, and the station held strong while pushing for a power increase.
1996 had some big changes for the station. CJAM went to 500 watts on July 19th, and we got our own bank account. That was the first push for financial autonomy from SAC, or as we now know it, the University of Windsor Student Alliance.
Yeah, the CJAM autonomy and the UWSA thing has always been an interesting thing, because right from the point that we went FM, we were kind of a separate entity, but it was in this very strange state. We were owned by the Student Media Corporation, which is an Ontario incorporated company, simply because under the way we were licensed, we could not be directly owned by the university students or whatnot.
CJAM received a great deal of blame for the debt of the UWSA's Student Media Corporation, or SMC, which then consisted of the student newspaper and radio. But it was, in fact, a lack of income from the Lance student newspaper and UWSA's mismanagement that indebted SMC. In 1998, the UWSA had overpaid the Student Media Corporation by over $300,000, an error only uncovered when CJAM required funds to restructure its staff. The debt had been accumulated by the Lances many years in the red, But UWSA was hesitant to let CGM off the hook for a debt not even their own.
UWSA made life difficult. The license was held through the university, and not through UWSA, but UWSA, of course, has controlled the building forever. And they tried to control the station as well, in various ways. And that was kind of problematic.
However, on October 12, 1999, CJAM became its own entity, and the doors opened to alternative funding.
If UWSA was in charge, then our budget came through the UWSA budget. And did that mean we got everything we were supposed to get, given there was a fee, portion of the student fee, that was supposed to go to the station? And it didn't all come through. And payment was sometimes very slow. So the guy got frustrated enough to go to the university and get them to budget us separately. And that meant a lot. That meant there was a lot more freedom to spend the money as we wished. It didn't have to go through UWSA accounting.
Now, this is where our not-so-friendly prank caller, the Grand Dragon, makes his final move.
In the early 2000s, CJAM made the tedious switch to the digital age of the internet. Larry saw this as another perfect opportunity to mess with the station. He hacked into the computer system and left a little note for staff to prove his capabilities. But that was the last the station heard from Larry. After 20 years of faxes, calls, tapes, and even a run-in with some programmers, the Grand Dragon has mostly been forgotten, except for a good laugh in the station every now and then.
With Larry finally gone, CJAM could focus on the new world of internet broadcasting.
CJAM continued to grow steadily online and in the community until the frequency was threatened due to its unprotected status.
Basically what happened with the station switch, the reason it happened was because CJAM didn't have protected status, which meant that another station could apply for our frequency, which was 91.5, and take it, which is what happened. The station applied for it, and they're like, okay, you can have it. But then CJAM was like, well, wait a minute, we've been here for 20-something years. So the staff at the time, Adam Fox was the station manager, he kind of worked with the staff and a whole bunch of different people to get a new frequency, and so it was protected, and that was 99.1. So now they're protected status, and if someone wants the station, well, sorry, you can't have it.
What it was also, I think, was like a really great unifier for the station, because it really kind of cemented us within the community and got everyone really kind of working together in a way that I don't think they had before. And I think the fact that, you know, that CJAM was, you know, not necessarily in jeopardy, but there was a perceived sense of jeopardy that CJAM could potentially be in, really kind of woke up a lot of people within the organization and throughout the community to the value that CJAM holds. And I think those were, you know, kind of the first years where CJAM really was starting to take itself more seriously.
It was an exciting time because we were typically, as a college radio station, to the left of the dial on a frequency few people get to. And we were thrust right into the middle of the dial at 99.1. And that was exciting because it gives the opportunity for people who do move their dial away from the preset stations. They would come across us between some of the major players and just might hear something. They go, wow, what's going on in Windsor? That's some pretty cool stuff.
Well, it was, you know, again, something incredibly stressful and, you know, outside of my wheel well in terms of technical issues. But I remember when I was, I had done the interview for the program director's job, and we had to move over to 99.1 as a Christian radio conglomerate in America had coveted our spot. We did not have protected status where we are, and so there was a power outage. We lost a lot of power when we moved over, and I remember being a little discouraged on the way in and the way home to Toronto from the interview, just driving down the 401 and how much power we had lost. And, you know, I said during the interview, you know, if I get in there in this position, I'm going to do something about it. And, you know, certainly I had a great host of people helping me.
With 99.1 FM also came protected status, and CJAM's frequency was no longer up for grabs.
This is not a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is the real thing.
You're tuned to CJAM 99.1 FM in Windsor and Detroit.
Our campus radio station was approved for another power increase in 2014, capping its power at 2,084 watts.
The power increase party that we had here when CJAM officially switched over to 2,084 watts from 500 was a lot of fun. There was a lot of different people in the station at the same time, and that was also extremely stressful because during that period you had to put out a public service announcement reminder saying we were testing the signal, and it had to be played every 15 minutes. So we had to get everyone to play it every 15 minutes, and on top of that, I had to go through all of the overnight playlists and edit it in every 15 minutes. But the idea of going from 500 watts to 2,084 was just so positive and so exciting that I didn't really care.
It was important because I felt we were losing ground, having been reduced. I know we were losing ground. And so to bring it back up to the level that it was and beyond was just something huge.
CJAM had reached a new high, holding a significant spot in the community and allowing previous station manager Vern Smith to turn a passion into a good cause.
I'm a lifelong Clash fan and probably made far too many life decisions based on the words of Joe Strummer. You know, Joe Strummer was, to a certain extent, one of my guys, and we, at the time, there was a marathon based around homelessness issues that was run out of Montreal, and we were participating in that, and we had a lot of technical problems. It didn't really cover Windsor, Detroit's poverty issues. So around 2010, with about 3.5 weeks notice, we decided we're doing our own thing. We're doing a broadcast with Windsor that focuses primarily on Windsor, Detroit poverty issues. We're wrapping it around the music of Joe Strummer, which we thought was incredibly appropriate, and it was just a great outburst of journalism and music and activism, DJs and spoken word people working together. And with the benefit of CJAM.ca, we quite literally got the world to listen to Windsor, Detroit poverty issues a la Radio Clash. People called in and contacted us from all corners of the earth, and you know, it really warms my heart that it's still going on in 2018.
CJAM continues to host Pledge Drive and Joe Strummer Day, engaging the Windsor Detroit community. But we never forget our volunteers. At the end of every winter semester, staff hosts the Jammy Awards to recognize the amazing people that sit behind our microphones.
One of my other favorite memories, or I guess yearly memories, is hosting the Jammy Awards. It's a really great time for all of our programmers to get together. We sort of hang out together. We present the awards. I've been present at the award ceremonies pretty much every year that I've been here at CJAM. And it's really nice to see people be recognized for their hard work here at the station, as you know, 99% of people are volunteers. And we always try and choose different people for the categories every year, and it's nice to see see people's face light up, especially when they don't expect an award. And it's really nice to be able to honor our volunteers and sort of just like hang out and have fun and celebrate the fact that we all love radio.
Although we're not at the Jammy Awards, there is an award I want to give out. The most famous programmer from our history books goes to none other than Toronto Maple Leafs sports announcer Joe Bowen.
I had dreamt about playing in the National Hockey League, but then really quite quickly realized that I didn't quite have the makeup to play in the game. But I wanted to get into broadcasting, and so by taking the communication arts program, my dad, before he passed, wanted me to go to a university. And Windsor was the only university, certainly in Ontario, that had a radio TV broadcasting course. So that's why I decided to come to Windsor, and I very quickly got involved in the student radio station as a volunteer. So we would do lots of things, and most of it I got involved. I wanted to do play-by-play, and so we got involved very much in the student radio broadcasting of the home games from St. Denis Hall.
That's right, folks. The famous Joe Bowen was the Windsor Lancers announcer way before he got into the big leagues.
I've never worked a day in my life. I really haven't. I enjoy what I do. I really enjoy the hockey. I enjoy the broadcasting, the people that are involved in it, and I got my start at the student radio station by getting involved and working with athletes who just happened to be university students with me, but working with people like Dr. Paul Thomas and working with Walt Romano and people like that gave you a feel for the industry and a love for it, and I've been very, very fortunate in my career to end up doing what I am doing. But again, it all started by making a lot of mistakes and people not having a huge audience to at least come down. God, I don't wonder what it would have been like if they'd had Twitter back then. I probably would never gotten on the air again. But it gives you the opportunity to cut your teeth, and everybody has to be able to do that in order to get going.
CJAM has had an abundance of amazing people walk through its doors. You ask any jammer their favorite part of our alternative radio station, and the answer is unanimous.
The favorite part is the community of freaks and weirdos who listen to off-color music and know what they're talking about.
The people, for sure.
Stole my answer.
I met a lot of great people, a lot of nice people, a lot of interesting characters. Got to socialize with a lot of music nerds, which I always enjoyed. And pretty much my whole social circle, as small as it is almost entirely comprised of people I met at CJAM, either directly or indirectly, over the 13 years I was here. So it was a big part of my life. I met my wife here, so.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You know, you meet a lot of people in your life, but I don't know, all the people we met at CJAM, it was just kind of like you clicked. You had people to challenge you and people who had similar interests and just kind of, made you want to do more.
Like you say, it'd have to be, the people I've met. Some people I've met here have, have changed my life for the better, for sure. So I'm very fortunate to have had an opportunity to get involved at CJAM.
Oh, easily the people I met here and the relationships that we have. I did 2 programs here at the university, or actually 3, and really didn't know a lot of people in my program because when class ended, I was back here. It's amazing. I can go through, I could say that probably 80% of my relationships with people right now come back to somehow a connection to this place. So that you're reminding me now that's after 35 years, right? And it's not like even music maybe back then was a common point, but there were some people who did the news, special programs, ethnic shows, technical aspects. Yeah, it truly was like a family. It really was, and to have those connections and and to have these people are all over the world doing amazing things.
The great relationships I've made with everybody here. You have a common goal here. You have a common ideology with everybody that's here doing community programming, and it's really a great thing. And to see that grow out of literally nothing, and it just blossomed all of a sudden into this thriving on-air whirlwind that happened every day. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. I'll always carry that with me. It's just the camaraderie of the fellow volunteers. It's really a great thing.
I don't know, I think probably the favorite part is that I've just met a lot of people here. A lot of people I might have not otherwise have met. You know, a lot of contacts, a lot of interesting people, and you know, it really people that are just passionate about, you know, the shows they do or the music they play or the, you know, and again, it doesn't matter whether or not you know, whether or not there is a huge mass appeal.
I think my favorite part of the campus community radio is really the people that are involved with it. It's almost impossible to run into someone that you walk away with a negative experience.
I think the biggest takeaway is being able to work with so many different kinds of people. It's really been a pleasure, not just working here, but also volunteering here and getting to meet and, you know, kind of hang out with all of these people that really have one thing in common, which is a love of music or a love of a topic. I've learned so much just from the different people that I've met over the years, and it's been really cool to be able to communicate with different types of people, whether they are older than I am, younger than I am, speak a different language. You know, being able to communicate through music or through a love of a certain topic is really cool.
It's just all the friends and connections that you make with the other volunteers and programmers, as well as the music community at large, whether it's on a local or provincial or national or international level. I've been able to connect with meeting new people and finding out about new music, but then also being able to connect with artists that I have respected for so many years. So yeah, that's probably the biggest takeaway, is being able to connect with not only the people here at the station, but the music community throughout the world.
My favorite part has always been seeing new people come in and host programs, and that excitement that they get when they do a really good show, or they get that first call from someone telling them they really enjoy the music, or just when they get to bring a band to someone's attention, and being able to be the person that says that was a great show or you did a fantastic job has meant a lot to me.
The people who brought in the music that I'd never heard before, and, you know, every single day having the radio on and hearing something I never heard before, and, you know, something that really kicked me in the gut. And, you know, to this day, I miss having that, and I miss the people who brought those sounds.
Sometimes it's like a big dysfunctional family, but otherwise, you know, it manages to get along and put programming on the air.
There's no doubt you'll meet some amazing people around the station. With new faces or voices every week, we'll forever be an amateur radio station, redefining radio in Windsor and Detroit.
What's the point of playing mainstream radio or songs on this station when you can change it to any other station and hear that? You know, that's not what we're about.
I think the greatest benefit here at CJAM is being able to walk in here. Anybody can come into the station and learn the art of radio for free. We give people the training and all of the tools that they'll need to be successful on the radio if they want to learn that.
I think CJAM has always been an extremely strong provider of alternative music. Any genre, any time period. We have these programmers that some are very well experienced, some are novices, but they all have this love of music that is completely off the beaten path. Especially being in Windsor and Detroit, it's a very historical radio kind of border city, and to have people that have been a part of that in the past who have come here later on, or to have people that are discovering that history for the first time, they're always really excited to bring you those things that are hard to find and bring you that kind of content because they know how important it is. I think the music programming is some of the best in the area, to be honest.
This platform of CJAM, it provides a creative outlet for people, which really is like something essential. You know, part of living and breathing is having a way to, you know, put your energy into something that is challenging you and helping you learn and grow.
You know, it's really a community resource as what it's meant to be. It's not meant to try and be a, you know, something that, you know, millions or thousands of people will listen to. It's not aiming for that type of market, and you know, it really shouldn't. It's the kind of thing where, you know, as a university station, you can, you know, tune in and hear about academic subjects that most of the time would be very boring to listen to elsewhere. But you know, you might hear about it on CJAM, and it might pique your interest or whatever. Or you might hear about some band that, you know, just up and coming band that just got together in some guy's garage and recording a demo tape or, you know, whatnot. And who knows, maybe they'll be the next big thing, maybe they won't, but, you know, who knows? Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. You know, does that mean they shouldn't get any airplay? You know, it's definitely an outlet for that type of thing.
That's what makes college radio great, and that we should always be amateur radio for the students and have the young generation expressing their ideals of what music is rather than us old guys. I mean, I'm happy that they keep us around, but you need the fresh young blood to have their perspective of the world of musical culture, and it keeps everything fresh and lively.
It's great when you're 21 years old to be able to do a show and have other people listen to it.
In the 35 years since becoming an FM station, CJAM has been a beacon of local news and music. But as media changes, we always have to look forward.
Campus community radio is really important because it is kind of the last bastion of hope against a kind of a sea of corporate interests and values. Radio like ours does not really exist anymore.
I see campus radio expanding right now personally, especially, you know, here at the University of Windsor campus. We've been trying to integrate with student curriculum. So bringing in students from the digital journalism department so that they can get live to air radio experience is really unique, and I think that these types of programs again allow people to be a little bit more creative in a field where maybe they aren't going to be as creative in the future, or they, you know, might be able to think of a different project that kind of stems from a project that they're doing here at CJAM.
Campus radio is important because it still provides a voice for different genres and groups, whether it's spoken word content or music, that would otherwise go unheard. Even with the internet today, a lot of things get lost because there's so much.
You will still always need a curator. There's so much to wade through. And what you get with campus community radio is a real human being who has put real time into really curating and putting together a collection of music for you to listen to. There are these people who are extremely passionate about music and the spoken word programming as well, that are going to help you wade through this sea of music and information and kind of point you in the direction of some of the best, you know, stuff that's out there, or expose you to something that is underground, something that is kind of hidden from society in any sort of major way, you know, that you wouldn't really be able to access otherwise. So I mean, it's really the passion of the volunteers and the programmers at campus community radio stations that I think will propel them into the future.
I think the fact that you can still touch a button and its radio is on, or like, you know, tuned to a dial, it's still there. Radio still to me just seems so real, and I think it will always have a place compared to internet and satellite radio. I don't think they can compete at the end of the day.
And play-by-play in sports and in radio, I think that it's a very important aspect of it because, again, People are very transient. They're moving around. They're going places. And in the Toronto area, they've got hockey families that are taking kids to hockey games. What are you going to do on the way home? Well, let's listen to the Leaf game for a while until we get home, and maybe we'll watch it on TV afterward.
More and more stations started to spring up to the point where most campuses around the country have a AM or FM or a radio club in them, because it's been viewed as really an important foundation to have for students to come to participate.
Brady, Carly, and Jen, who are excellent, and I have complete and utter confidence in to carry CGM on to the next level.
I feel like I've heard people say to me before that radio is dead, which is not, I think that's a very extreme statement.
Campus radio isn't going anywhere.
For more than 70 years, radio has been on the University of Windsor campus. And on November 14, 2018, CJAM is celebrating 35 years on an FM frequency.
35 years, I'm glad I'm sitting down, because it certainly doesn't feel like that to me, but wow, that's something.
There's some programmers that have been here for like 35 years, which is just incredible that, you know, you have a place where you can come, you can be a part of a community, you can share what you love with your community, and you're standing for something. You're like, you know, you're making a community better by sharing your passion.
Before I started at CJAM, I don't think I really had any sort of direction. I was still in university. I was in the communications program doing film and documentary type stuff like this. And I really do enjoy film, but there is just something about being live on the radio that it's like nothing else.
Well, it was a great 12 years. I mean, I haven't really continued into campus radio here in Toronto, but I look fondly at the 12 years I was at CJAM. It was like, it made university much more enjoyable. I learned a lot, and yeah, it was a very positive experience.
This was the best job in Windsor, hands down. Like, this is like the most fun thing that you could do.
It was awesome. I loved it. I was paid peanuts to work 40 hours a week, but I was probably here 60 hours a week. And you know, you woke up every morning wanting to go to work, and it was a drag when you had to go home. It was an amazing job.
There's no doubt about it. CJAM is way more than just a campus community radio station. Smashing all preconceived notions, redefining radio, and reaching higher ground in Windsor and Detroit, we are CJAM 99.1 FM.
There's no other place like it. And I'll tell you one thing, it is the best damn music station in the entire country.
Oh, my catchphrase? You want the catch? Oh my gosh. I'll tell you how this happened. I mean, my dad, I used to sit on his lap, and he was a big hockey fan and big Johnny Bauer fan. And if Johnny made a great save, my dad would bellow out, "Holy Mackinac, what a great save by Johnny. Did you see that?" And as I said, my dad passed away before I went to high school, so I wasn't in broadcasting, even thinking about broadcasting, and never did ask him where he got it from. I've heard people say, well, he stole it from the Hamilton Tiger Cat rant, which is Oski wee wee, Oski wah wah, holy Mackinac, tigers eat 'em raw. And then I thought, well, no, but then I saw on TV, you know, holy Toledo and holy cow and all of this sort of stuff. Again, instead of profanity back in those days. Unfortunately, that's changed, because now it seems you can say anything you want on radio, and and be pissed off or whatever. But I was doing a game in Chicago, and this was after years of doing junior and American Hockey League and the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Felix Potvin made a great save, and I blurted it out. Holy mackerel, what a save by Potvin. I wouldn't have used it again, but Bill Waters, who was doing color with me, I looked over and he was on his knees laughing uproariously, and I thought, well, if I got that kind of a response out of him, again, trying to be personality, try to show some fun and have fun on the air, I thought, well, I'll use it again, and so we have.